Struan Stevenson, Conservative MEP for Scotland. This is a very significant amount of money. We're talking billions of pounds, but how significant is this actually for Scottish fishermen, this money from Europe?
Well, it is billions of pounds, but don't forget it's £5 billion over 7 years for the whole fisheries sector of the whole of Europe, 28 member states. Now compare that to what's given to farmers under the CAP budget. They get £40 billion a year for farming and rural development. We're talking £5 billion over 7 years. So it's a drop in the ocean, let's say. However, the big issue here was the French draftsman of this report was trying to grab money for rebuilding the French fleet and the Spanish fleet. They would have had their noses in the trough as well. And £5 billion would have very quickly disappeared if we started allowing it to be used for renewing and rebuilding fishing vessels. So we defeated that. That means there will be more money now for better scientific evaluation of the fish stocks, for helping buy technical gear to avoid discards that are now going to be banned under the reform of the Common Fisheries Policy. So a good outcome.
As you say, this really puts the money behind some of those reforms that you and all the other MEPs have been working very hard on over the last few years. So on discards in particular, how would this money, for example, be now used if it's now approved? There's still a few final stages to go through.
Well, the key thing about the land-all policy now is that we have to avoid what used to be dumped, 1.5 million tonnes of healthy fish used to be dumped into the sea. There's no point in simply bringing it on shore and dumping 1.5 million tonnes of fish on land. So what we have to do is try and leave the fish in the sea. That means we need better science, we need better stock analysis, and we need better gear for the fishermen to use that can avoid catching that unwanted fish in the first place. So bycatch avoidance is the key to all this, and the money now in the budget will be available for that purpose instead of wasting it building new fishing vessels when already we have fleet overcapacity in Europe.
I understand there will also be funding for some things onshore, for example, developing ports. Is that welcome? And also retraining fishermen if they want to go into other industries. That was also a point that MEPs wanted to include.
Yeah, well, of course, that is very important. There may be now a requirement for combining some other funds from other areas, from rural development, for instance, with some of the fisheries fund, for redesignating ports where fishermen can spend part of their season working in the tourist industry. So redesignating ports for that purpose is now a possibility. Retraining fishermen for other business, including the tourist industry, will now be possible under the budget that we've voted for.
Given these kind of range of ideas that have gone forward, do you think this is a good outcome? Do you think this is going to make a positive difference to fishermen in Scotland?
I think it is a good outcome. I was saying it's a very tight budget. Compared to agriculture, it's very tight. None of it would have been available to Scotland at all had we seen it all being swallowed up by the French and Spanish fleets building new French and Spanish fishing vessels. Now Scotland has a chance to get some of that money and use it for the purposes that will ensure conservation and a sustainable fishery, a good future for our fishermen.
Now, you've literally only just come out of the vote, so it's not possible to look through every detail, but one of the things that I know you wanted to include was to support the aquaculture industry. If indeed that has gone ahead, as we think it has, how significant is that?
Well, of course, there are 6,000 jobs in aquaculture in Scotland alone. For us, the salmon and trout farming sector is extremely important. We are exporting high-quality fish around the world. So I wouldn't like to see all that money going to our competitors who are trying to build up competing fish farming industries across the whole of Europe. I want to see us getting a fair proportion of that in Scotland. It means co-financing, and it means the Scottish Government have to put applications in and be prepared to co-finance it to make sure we boost our fish farming sector. Very important.
Just finally, what happens next? What's the process before this money comes to a reality, really?
Well, now we have to go into trialogue, having voted through by a big majority the budget. We go into trialogue between the Parliament, the Council and the Commission. We have to sit in rooms for hours on end working out compromises where the dual legislators, Parliament and the Council, have any disagreements. We have to find a consensus, and on that basis we can then cement in place the budget for the next 7 years.